Thank you for having me today. What we're going to focus today on is hybrid intelligences and how we can amplify our human potential. Before we talk about how we amplify the human potential, we need to make sure that we understand how to define actual intelligence. So it's really important that we understand what can humans do and what do we aim to amplify. And if you look at the Britannica definition, it's quite clear, and we sometimes take it for granted, but the brain is quite a powerful machine. There are also several theories of intelligence, and although our scope today is not to go over each one of them, it is clear that over the past several hundred years, we've focused, unfortunately, only on a few of them and have neglected others. So hopefully, the emerging technologies that we have currently at our disposal will help us over the next few hundred years to actually be able to hone in on all these theories and amplify every single one so that we can truly achieve better outcomes. So what are some of the types of human intelligences that I wanted to highlight for you today? I often mention this, and many people say, I never heard about it, but it's really essential to understand the difference between fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. And I think everybody in this audience has encountered that issue. We, in the current education system, unfortunately also don't always leverage both of these types of intelligences, and many curriculums are only focusing heavily on the crystallized intelligence. I also hope that over the next few years, with the emerging technologies that I'll share in the second part of the presentation, we can truly augment and amplify every single type of intelligence. And I think, again, this audience is very attuned to the fact that we see so many beautiful types of intelligences in our colleagues, in our families, in our children. And not always do we have curriculums that know how to appreciate all these types of intelligences, combine them, leverage them, adjust the curriculums accordingly so that every child or every adult can enjoy learning and not feel frustrated. So again, when we talk later a little bit about the emerging technologies, I think that's the new frontier we have available now with AI and nanotechnology and human brain interfaces and several other technologies that I'll share with you today. We can truly help humans at any age leverage all these types of intelligence that we have. And each one of you, if you look at the list that's on the screen, you'll probably start thinking about, which one is the one that I'm predominantly using? Which one is the one that I'm having trouble with? And I think with the emerging technologies and new types of learning models that we aim to achieve, we can then actually hope to accomplish a combined, augmented, amplified model that leverages all these types of intelligence. Neither one is superior to the other. All of them can yield beautiful outcomes and can solve problems in a very different way. As a matter of fact, if we ever have a workshop, this is one of the examples I give. I give the same problem, and then I let everybody use different types of intelligences to solve those problems. And you'll see the outcomes are amazing, but very different approaches. I also wanted to take the opportunity to highlight something that we don't always talk about. With my background in neuroscience, I spent 20 years in this field, although I don't practice it anymore. It's really essential that with the latest emerging technologies, we finally take a stab at honing in on executive functioning amplification. We have a lot of tests that are used for the past 100 years for a variety of reasons, and I think if we deploy emerging technologies such as AI in a mindful, appropriate way, we can actually help humans significantly improve the way they currently access the types of executive functioning domains. And again, each one of you, if you want to go over these domains by yourself, you'll see, that's something that I am struggling with, or this is something that I'm excelling at, and that's okay. What we're trying to convey is that with the emerging technologies combined with our strengths and our weaknesses, we can actually get better outcomes. And now we'll talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. And at many conferences, I always try to emphasize that it's so important to maybe correct some of the myths and misconceptions and misunderstandings, because when you actually look at the definition of artificial intelligence, we shouldn't have all these problems, and the social media is probably, unfortunately, one of the major culprits for that. So I'm encouraging each one of you to please look at the definition of artificial intelligence, and I'll share just a few bullets today, but I think if you go and read, you'll see that our misnomer has created, unfortunately, the major confusion. So what is AI defined at? And as you can see on the screen, there are different sources. I chose 2, but if you look, you'll see there are more than 50 definitions. So we as experts in the field don't even agree on exactly what artificial intelligence is. The other part that's important is the first time the term was mentioned was 1956. And at that time, it was actually correctly mentioned. Intelligence, amplification. That's how it should have been, which is also the title of our talk today. Sadly, due to social media and Hollywood movies, we morphed into this other confusing term, so many people confuse artificial intelligence with actually what we're trying to achieve today, which is amplifying human intelligence and learning from human intelligence to teach mathematical models, which is what I'll share in the next few minutes. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, misnomer as it is, we would like to also highlight another important distinction. There are several types of AI, big categories that many times are being lumped together when people write articles or make comments about the dangers or opportunities of AI. So again, I would like to encourage you to look carefully about what does narrow or weak AI mean, and that's very focused and mimics our human type of learning and human type of cognition. The general and strong AI is the one that aims to create machines that will be more intelligent than us. That doesn't mean they will replace us completely, no, but they will significantly perform faster, better, higher tasks that we can't compute as they can, right, as in accuracy or speed or magnitude. And then, of course, the artificial general intelligence, which has sparked so much controversy, and then the superintelligence. They are not our scope today, but again, I would encourage all of us to sometimes read on those because they're fascinating scientific journal publications on those as well. And then what kind of tools do we have in our AI portfolio? And this, again, when you look at many articles, people put AI all in one bucket. There's a big difference when you talk about each of the AI tools in your portfolio, and each of them has pros and cons. For learning in particular, each one of these can be extremely helpful. And they're used across the world in many domains with great results. Of course, there are also things that we need to be mindful of because like with everything, if you misuse data or misuse data models or do not give appropriate technical specs to a computer, bad outcomes can occur. So it's up to us. And we have the moral responsibility to design these models appropriately. So again, I would like to highlight symbolic AI, really important, the machine learning and natural language processing. They're hugely important in all the educational advances we're seeing across the world now. And then again, major controversy around neural networks and general adversarial networks. I just want to highlight, there's no machine that can do something without a human telling it what to do and giving it certain guardrails. And this is one of the major topics I speak at conferences, because we see again in the social media a lot of articles that are taking elements out of a scientific journal and completely reshaping it to the point that it can cause, unfortunately, misunderstandings. So again, deep learning is something that we can all use in education, and we're using it across the world with high benefits. There's no danger there. Reinforcement learning we've been using for thousands of years. Just now we have much more advanced machines to help us with that, but the concept has been created many, many years ago. And then, of course, the neural networks, as we mentioned, they're just mathematical models. They're not thinking by themselves. We create the mathematical models and allow them to mimic what humans are currently doing without a machine. And then the general adversarial networks, yes, they're designed to fool and to trick an algorithm, but they're designed also by humans, very smart ones actually. So none of these models are ever able to function on their own. Now sometimes, yes, we set the standards and the guardrails very wide because we would like to see what the outcome is. And let's use an example that's currently very relevant. This is how vaccines now were developed, right, or the medications that we use to treat COVID-19. They allowed AI to use quite a broad algorithm to look through all the medications available in the history of mankind that were ever approved, even if they were approved for other conditions. And the AI algorithm was able in a few hours to find something that us humans all together working for the next thousands of years could have never found. So those are just, few examples of good use. Of course, you can use something like that for bad purposes too, but again, that's not the machine's fault. That's again humans that aim to use something for the wrong intent. And now we're going towards the second part of my presentation, and I wanted to share some of the latest technologies that have been used currently across the world to augment the educational system, to reshape the educational methods, and to amplify human potential. Artificial intelligence was just one, but we have AR, VR, XR, holograms, 3D. It's currently exploding. Even when I did a search just a few days ago in preparation for this keynote, I was shocked just in 2-3 months how many new startups emerge and how many new beautiful interactive models are being tried out across the world in schools at all levels, from preschool, kindergarten, to all the way graduate education. And then the ones that you might have not heard that much about, but nanotechnology. We can implant a little chip that can monitor our learning, our speed, our attention, as our previous keynote speaker mentioned. We have, of course, bionic organs now that have been approved, such as bionic eyes that will be able to do all kinds of things we before never imagined, right? And then bioimplants, wearable sensors, and I'll show you a few examples that are relevant for education. When you see this list, many of you might be thinking this sounds like a science fiction movie, but it's not. It's being used in universities across the world right now. And I think when you do a search, you'll see what the potentials are in terms of not only teaching everybody a different way, but also helping children with disabilities, helping adults that have, like we mentioned, different learning styles. So the possibilities are endless. And last but not least, to make learning fun as opposed to torture. That would be great too. And as you'll see, there are some models with AR, VR, XR. Well, I taught 60 seminars at graduate level. And I can tell you, yes, there were some who thought it was fun, but not everybody always thinks it's fun. So I think if we all put our minds together and really disrupt the educational methodology and try to find new tools and methods to engage children and adults, we can maybe achieve the same adherence and same joy and same dedication like we see in video games and other digital tools. Have you ever had to force a kid to play a video game? No? Have you ever had to force a kid to stay a little bit longer, please, to play a video game? No? So, and adults, how much time do we spend on Netflix and other digital devices? If you look even during the pandemic, it exponentially went up, right? Not to mention other types of devices. So, last but not least, I want to highlight very quickly some of the opportunities we have. So with these emerging technologies, we can customize curriculums for all those types of intelligences. We can augment when someone has a little problem in one domain as opposed to put them in a just learning disability classroom, which is still great, but then we have these other tools available. And then, of course, integration and harmonization of all those domains that we mentioned as opposed to now just having silos the way we teach. And of course, acceleration. That's a little the dangerous one, I would say, out of all this list. Because yes, with some of these devices, we see that the brain has actually changed in morphology. There are British studies that show that more than certain hours per day in kids playing video games or playing at high speed, certain neural structures are changing in shape, either growing or shrinking or redefining themselves. So that is something that requires future research. And then, last but not least, some other challenges which are out of the scope today, but I just want to mention them because they're important. Ethical issues, of course, because if we start implanting human brain interfaces and chips that help us, of course, there is the reverse that we need to also be mindful what bad things can happen. Legal, human resources, and then, of course, the digital divide and digital fluency. But I would urge you to look at a 1-year-old child, how they're using an iPhone, and how you can give them an iPhone without any explanation, and how they'll figure it out faster than all of you in this room or myself, right? You give them a new digital device and they can just figure it out. And we need instructions and call help desk 15 times. So now, just real quick in closing, I wanted to give you some practical examples so that you know these are real studies. You have the links too, it's not just pictures. So 3D printing and wearables have been used for education, so that little sensor actually monitors if you can read properly, if you're paying attention properly. If you have dyslexia, it helps you automatically. Imagine if we could have this in the future for all the kids, what great help they could have. Wearables, there's a big study in China, big surprise, that all of them are wearing now the headsets. If you went to any of the nature and scientific museums in the United States or in the world, these were just used a few years ago for fun science projects in a museum. Well, now they have masses, thousands and thousands of children in schools, all of them wearing, and they're monitoring everything. The speed of learning, the attention that, again, our previous keynote speaker mentioned, and I think it was minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, right? So definitely there are huge gains we can have. Now we also have to see what are the negative consequences of wearing all of this hours in a row. So we'll have to look at oncology studies of the brain over the next few years. But definitely from an educational perspective, instant feedback, instant ability to help the children. As you've seen, I don't know if you followed this recently, but Sophia, the robot that has been shown at multiple conferences, I actually went to one in this very conference center last year where I had an opportunity to see it in action, and it's fascinating. I mean, in the future, we can see in emerging markets that robots can teach. And when you have no teacher, such as many places in Africa or Indian rural villages, having any teacher like this with the wealth of information we have currently available will certainly be better. Now, that doesn't mean we need to replace it where we have humans being able to teach it. Obviously not. But where you have nothing, definitely. I can see that in the future, and it's being done already. Just a few weeks ago, we had the first proven result with a patient being able to think about something, and the AI algorithm was able to write it. So no typing, no even movement of the arm. That's separate from the one that followed 2 weeks after. We're just imagining that you write with your hand. So imagining that you write already was able to produce written text on a screen. So we're advancing super fast. It's literally every week. So imagine a child with dysgraphia or an adult post-stroke with graphic dysfunction, how now you can actually just think that you're writing and you can have the text appear on screen, right? Major breakthroughs. And then, of course, particularly in the medical field, I'm very jealous of the medical students now. I wish when I was a medical student, I would have had the amazing 3D and hologram type of teaching they have. It's so beautiful, it's fun, and it's so much easier to imagine as opposed to the black and white textbooks like this, like we had to learn anatomy. So definitely in the medical education and clinical sphere, medical simulation, safety training, the holograms are taking huge, and I've seen it live. It's amazing. And then, of course, smart glasses for education. I don't know if you follow this, but in the last 3 to 6 months, all major companies that are having the backup to create something at scale have been investing massively, to the point that 1/5 of their staff is dedicated to creating smart glasses, not only for education, but also for employee training and for many other purposes which are out of our scope today, including physician performance. Brain-computer interfaces, you all probably saw Elon Musk, but again, I always like to highlight, that's what you see in the social media. The good work is being done every day in universities across the world where they're implanting the same type of human brain interfaces to help patients that have intractable seizures, that have strokes, that have many other chronic neurological diseases. And with this type of interface, we can actually help them. They already had positive results. As a matter of fact, just a few weeks ago, the FDA approved the first device that does exactly that for stroke patients. And it works. Just a few more slides, and then we're done and ready for the next keynote speaker. Again, AR, VR, XR is the most fun out of this whole list. All adults and kids alike enjoy it very much, and it has really transformed the educational system. There are several innovation labs across the world affiliated with universities and with other undergraduate schools that are using them. And imagine just to learn chemistry, physics in this type of way or combined with the hologram as opposed to how all of us had to learn it in the past. And you can answer yourself how beautiful this would have been, right? So much easier to visualize all that dry material and to have these kind of opportunities. Not to mention the unlocking creativity that is in all of us, and sometimes you don't even know you have it. When you see what kids can accomplish with these type of technologies and how they learn, it's fascinating. And same thing as I mentioned, there are several postgraduate programs now at top Ivy League schools that are offering training for AR, VR. So I encourage you to look, because when you just see those job descriptions, we have trouble. You need a PhD in understanding the job descriptions for these type of technologies. So that's the future, and I've seen more and more universities offering this, which is a trend. If we see that, usually that means that this is where the industry is moving towards. Every week we have new ones. And then, of course, bionic organs. Imagine if my eyeball now could automatically know what all of you think and take pictures of all of you and feed the information that I need to tell you so that you stay interested and focused, and it would measure all the images for me very quickly and tell me what it sees. That would be a completely different environment, right? And same thing, there was an FDA approval towards helping, again, patients with blindness to have these bionic eyes. Same way, the lenses that are also digital lenses, they're used not only for biometrics, but for other purposes as well. And then the last but not least, my favorite, but the metaverse. If you have not heard about the metaverse, at least maybe the Disney latest social media has called your attention to it. But for our purposes today, metaverse for education is growing. And there are very few experts in the world who know what it is and how to make it useful for educational purposes. I would urge you to take a look because it is fascinating. There are already free apps for teachers offering metaverse incorporation into your curriculum, which even shocked me. I couldn't believe it. This is how advanced the field is. In all countries of the world, including ours, you can now download beautiful opportunities to engage your students to use these type of immersive technologies. And that's it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you found some of this useful. Thank you.